Well, good morning, everybody. What an intro. Everybody got their little dance jams on. Wake everybody up. You've probably had your second cup of coffee by now. Thank you all for joining this morning. I'm Tina Cannon. I'm the president of the Austin LGBT Chamber of Commerce. You are joining us on a historic day. Today is the second meeting of our statewide LGBT Chamber Roundtable program. Our Texas LGBT Chambers of Commerce host these quarterly programs really to help businesses connect and to grow. And the LGBTBE is one of the best programs to do that. And we are bringing you today some really top-notch panelists from Bank of America, from the entire county of Bexar, from Chevron, Outbranding, Pendergrass Consulting Group, and PepsiCo. We are going to really walk through kind of how we support LGBTEs through their existing education, how we create connections and opportunities, both the development side and the matchmaker side, and then connecting those LGBTEs across the state of Texas for best practices, for sharing, for connections, and ultimately for business growth and development. We're really looking to maximize this relationship that we have between our four chambers. So if you're not familiar, of course, there's the North Texas, there's the Houston, San Antonio, and Austin chambers. Engage, get involved, do business across county lines. Now that Zoom is around, we found that you can make a connection with somebody in Dallas, and Dallas can make a connection with somebody in Bexar County. The lines are blurred, as they sing about. So we're going to turn it over here shortly to Tony, who'll walk you through all of the fun stuff and put in all the best Tony jokes in the world. But of course, I'm joined here with Tony from the North Texas, Melissa from San Antonio, and Tammy Wallace from the Houston. Oh, sorry, I ran through all your beautiful faces really quick there. There you go. These are all pre-COVID haircuts for all of us. Congratulations. We're going to use some polling during this session today. So I wanted to see, let's see, are we ready with that first poll? I may have jumped too fast for our lovely folks there. So let us know who you are. Just click on the chamber that you're affiliated with. If you're not, click other and feel really bad about yourself. Aside from the panelists, so you can feel good about yourself. All right, look at that. ATX representing Houston, North Texas, and San Antonio. And then that 7%, I'm just going to assume that y'all are the panelists because we don't need 7% not LGBTBE certified. How long, let's play a little goofy one. How long has your business been certified? Now that we know who you are, let's get to know a little bit about how long you've been a certified LGBTBE. And it's if you've not been certified at all, go ahead and click less than 1 year. Drum roll says less than 1 year. 2 to 5 coming in second. We got some old timers on the horn with about 28% of you coming in from 6 to 10 years. That's great. And that's experience that we want to share on both sides of that aisle there. We've got some that have extensive experience and some that are just getting into the game. And so you got there with somebody else's help. Make sure you reach back and pull your neighbors up with you. So let's get started. Let's get Mr. Tony on the line to take over from here.
Thank you very much, Tina. Before I continue, I do want to point out that the North Texas LGBT Chamber of Commerce Board Chair, Gary Sanchez, is with us. It's always good to recognize the boss. So wave and say hi, Gary. There you go. Thank you very much, Gary. Alrighty, so we are going to meet our presenters. We're doing something really interesting today. We're being both, I guess, virtual and live, I guess. So Paul Pendergast, who's the principal with Pendergast Consulting Group, did a really top-notch presentation at last year's Texas DEI conference. So we've taken that and we've cut it into something smaller as a presentation for today. And as I believe Tina mentioned, I'll go through our panelists quickly. Kimberly Treesh she is the Vice President of Procurement and Strategy Manager for Supplier Diversity at Bank of America. We have Renee Watson from Bexar County Small Business and Entrepreneur Department. David Feldman, he's the Manager of Supplier Diversity Local Content for Chevron. Logan Wick, who is the founder of Outbranding, and Trung Tu, the Manager of Supplier Diversity at PepsiCo. So thank you all for being with us, and thank you, Paul, virtually. I did send Paul an email and said, hey, he's in California, said, if you're up at 7 a.m. and want to see yourself, feel free, but I don't think we'll be seeing him. So thank you, panelists. We appreciate you being here. And let's go ahead and start out with Paul's presentation, and we'll be back with some panelist discussion in just a moment.
Can really truly be tailored for whatever business model your company is. If you're professional services, if you are a contractor, if you are a manufacturer, if you are an IT designated kind of business, you really can use this statement of qualifications model for all aspects and different types of businesses. So it's not one size fits all, you get to customize it. If you're going to be competitive, you need to be clear and concise. You need to reinforce what's most important in regards to that project or that opportunity. And then we want to underscore really the value and the solutions that you can bring to that given project or client. So really, in essence, why do we need a really well-written, well-done, competitive edge on the statement? You need to communicate effectively your capabilities, your capacity, and your availability. And the reality is, somebody who's sitting across the table from you is making their decisions rather quickly. They are going to try to put you into a box. They're going to try to figure out, is this person going to be a value add, or are they going to simply put you into a category of all the rest? We want you to stay out of that all the rest category. This is not rocket science by any means. I think why we have been successful in working with small businesses of all sizes, all varieties, we work a lot with small, disabled veteran, disadvantaged, minority, women, LGBT, differently abled companies. There really isn't a business that we've met that we haven't been able to truly help them organize their information in a really credible and easy to read format. So it's 12 points, no more, no less. All you have to do is make sure that you organize the information that you're going to see on these two slides, and then you're going to be able to really move forward. Now here is the other, this is a little bit more into detail, but there's also the bullet point, which is about your value statement or value proposition. And this is really important because it's going to be really key that most people put their value proposition at the very top of the statement of qualifications. We advocate always that a statement of qualifications document that you're going to use is 1 page, 2 if it really is necessary, but definitely 1 page. So your value statement is going to lead the whole document, and it's going to be the first thing that the person reads. Now, here's a couple key bullet points to think about while you're developing your value proposition, but it's the value your company promises to deliver to them should they buy your product. Let's go into some different cards here so we can talk about them, and I think this is actually some of the most relevant information. So here's a professional services company, Acumen. You'll see here what they did, and again, very simple, very clean, very distinct. So to start this line card, the things that you can take note of, their logo, their brand has got that dark blue with the kind of brighter green. So you see how they took the colors from their logo and then branded the document together with the entire piece. So they've got their contact information, but at the very top, look, improving the nation's transportation infrastructure. Okay, it gives me a clear definition of where they work. Then in their profile, a couple key points they bring out. They're a fast-growing professional consulting firm. Okay, fast-growing tells me they must be doing something right. They've probably got some good bandwidth. They have good front office and back office capabilities. But fast-growing is a pretty good, it starts to really define what that company's all about. Then it talks about the specific areas that they work in: construction management, engineering, operations. So it gives the reader a very quick way to check off in their mind, this is where I can put this person's business. Obviously talks a little bit about that they're a small, flexible firm based in California, but they do have a global reach. So, you know, be proud of where you're at, but at the same time, their statement really does position that they can do work globally. And I do like the phrase, when it comes to client support, they have oversized goals that they want to meet their clients' expectations. From there, we go to the services, we go to the business info, total number of employees, also a really great indicator. So obviously at this point, Acme was 17 years old, 45 employees. That tells me they have good sustainable growth and that they are of a size that could have some good capacity. Then they list their NAICS codes, which are basically North American Industry Classification codes. These, to a certain buyer, would let them know exactly what are their areas of specialization. From an insurance perspective, they got E&O insurance, which is important if you're going to be working on drawings, architecture, engineering, and so forth. And then they do talk about their certifications: clean, quick, concise. Then, while they do list a number of projects, they've listed 10 on this, they've actually highlighted a couple of projects they want the eye to be drawn to. So for in this case, they really wanted to highlight their BART experience. So they therefore, you know, just kind of drew the eye with the circles there. And then they also listed the clients. So, you know, people want to do business with who they know. Many times in these days of LinkedIn and so forth, social media, when people are referencing and looking for information about your business, they're going to go to a couple different sources. But if they don't know you personally, but they see that, for instance, this company has worked with the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation District. Oh, I know X, Y, and Z, so I could basically, you know, do some research and vetting on this firm based on the information. Then you also see, again, this is an engineering and CM firm, so their use of images, clean, precise, and it really starts to talk about it conveys what's really important to them. This to me looks like a clean company that's successful, that's got its act together, and they're not going to waste my time. So if we go to the next one, this is a woman-owned contractor. She actually does concrete pumping, okay? So from her perspective, she wanted to hit that she was a woman-owned business. So in her opening statement, she really does highlight that. And, you know, what she has done in this one, if you scroll down, so she's got all the right business categories and she's hit all the right stuff. But since she has a lot of certifications, she actually developed and inserted a certification matrix, which not only talked about, yes, she does have the certification, but here's what it's for, here's my certification number, and, you know, here's, you know, all the information so you don't have to, you know, hunt and peck for it. She's already done it for you. And if I was sitting across the table from her, I would say this person's detail oriented. This person has some good project experience. I get a sense of, you know, nice use of the color, not excessive, just attractive and well laid out. I'm going to get a generally very good feeling from this person and this line card. Here's an interesting one.
All righty. Thank you, Paul. So we're going to take these first two and talk about them a little bit with our panelists, and then we'll take a look at some other ones. So Renee, I'd like to start with you, if we could. You know, looking at the Acumen card, which was the first one which had some public transportation machinery and stuff. I'm just kind of curious, were there anything within that card that you particularly liked or didn't like that you would be looking for from a company wanting to do business with you?
So thank you, Tony, and I am really excited that it was really clean and crisp, as Paul said. The tagline at the top that emphasized the nation's infrastructure immediately told me that they were probably a nationwide um, contractor. They probably have great capacity to do business. As a county, we do road and bridge work and infrastructure. They probably have that type of information. One of the things I did notice is that their codes were for the NAICS, which is a federal contractor. Paul had mentioned that it needs to be customized. We use the NIGP, the National Institute for Government Purchases. And you might want to make sure it's customized. And I know at the state agency level, they use classification codes. So we want to make sure that you're customizing that capability statement and maybe have 3 or 4 in your wheelhouse, depending on who you're reaching out to. One of the things I immediately noticed on their certification roll is they have a LBE. In our world, LBE indicates large business enterprise. If it's LGBTBE, then it needs to be updated to be very specific on that certification, because that's kind of a conflict between the SBE and the LBE in our world on this statement. Other than that, I thought it looked very, very good. The colors were good, and looks like a very, very good company's presentation.
Excellent. Thank you. David, I want to ask you about CalCon, but before I do, I just want to see, did you have anything on the acumen that you wanted to mention?
Well, I mean, I would generally echo Renee's remarks. You know, I think it's certainly very professional as this, you know, the 3 points. Does it deliver on capacity, capability, availability? I would say yes to all 3 of those. You know, for me personally, you know, I am not so much a NAICS code kind of guy, but I do, you know, I do know that some people, so I think it ought to be included. If, you know, if I were coaching them, I might put it, you know, perhaps not so centrally located, but generally, you know, it comes across as, you know, a company that is capable and professional and prepared and sort of understands what it takes to do business with large corporations. So I mean, I give it a, you know, high marks.
Excellent.
Overall.
So how about the CalCon? And I was fortunate enough to actually be in San Francisco and meet Julie. Yeah, she's pretty dynamic. I love it. A woman-owned concrete pumping business. How many of those are there in the world? You know, so she's great. So what thoughts do you have on the CalCon line card?
You know, I would say, you know, many of the same things. I think it you know, the colors, you know, the professional representation, I think is very positive. You know, it's right up front. There's no question about what this company does. You know, for me, if I had to, you know, provide some feedback, and I'd be interested in my colleagues' sort of view on this, but this notion of leading in the very first sentence about being woman-owned, or you could say the same thing about being LGBTQ owned, or minority owned, or veteran owned. You know, I guess my instinct here is to favor not necessarily leading with ownership, but rather leading with capabilities. And then, you know, you could convey, because there's sort of an implication there that, you know, one of our capabilities is, or one of the reasons that you should hire us is because we're woman owned. And I think you know, different people are going to have different views of that, and we're supplier diversity professionals, so we're, you know, we're looking for diverse companies, and that is useful. I think perhaps there's other ways to convey it. You know, you might and she's devoted a good part of the real estate on this one page to certification, so it's a little bit redundant in that way. So, you know, my instincts around sort of not leading with your capabilities, leading with what distinguishes you from your competitors, um, and the fact that you are a diverse, woman-owned, LGBTQ-owned, minority-owned, is a bonus that can be added. So that's just,
Okay.
my
Renee, did you have any thoughts on this one?
Well, yeah, a couple. I don't see bonding capacity. So one of the things in license and insurance, she talks about a liability, but from a concrete and a heavy highway kind of person, the aggregate and bonding probably probably should be noted on there. And then the word OSHA, because everyone in our industry is looking at safety. So she could put her OSHA type on there. I would agree with some of the things that Dave was bringing out, and maybe replace the. I couldn't, if I was going to copy this, I couldn't really tell if there was a bear in the logo. We might want to put her picture if she wants to really emphasize woman owned. We've seen a lot of capability statements with their photographs, and that tells you up front that who owns this company and who's in charge. Maybe she wants to put a hard hat on, but the image of the company versus wasting that real estate. We don't like yellow, just by the way, because when you make photocopies or you share this and it goes black and white, she might want to bring that out just a little bit more of a lighter color to help her with her capability statement. Other than that, again, that LBE is on there, and we might want to make sure that everyone that's in the LGBTBE community kind of updates their certifications, because we're real sensitive to those.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much. So now we're going to take a look at the next two, and then we're going to hear from Kimberly and Logan. So the next one is going to be, what is this? Premium resource.
Here's an interesting one from a different business category. This LGBT certified business actually deals with advertising, promotional, and specialty items. So from the premium resource perspective, she has literally thousands and thousands of products that she can work with. But the challenge for her then was to, how do I take all this wonderful information about my business and project who and what I am with a certain amount of personality, because her business is marketing and specialty items. So obviously here she chose at the very top, experience, service, price, and products. Boom. She's kind of already hit some of those high points that are really important to those who are purchasing. I love the use of the image at the top. I think it sparks a conversation. It might be something that shows a little bit of personality. And then she has really succinctly gone through and talked about her company profile and her client base. She's got a nice, varied roster of clients, then projects. So this one, again, it was a little bit different because she had to, she doesn't have clients or products that go on for years, but she has products that are for specific companies where she had to customize information. And company services, this is where she really was able to refine. And again, she's not trying to be the master of 100 different services. She chose the top ones that were most applicable, most beneficial, and probably most profitable to her. And then she did add on to the NAICS codes and then the SIC codes, the SIC codes, which are yet another classification system. And then she, on this one, chose to put her contact information at the bottom. So what this does for Andrea when she goes out, it's a way for her to tell her story. And it helps her if she's nervous, if maybe she's not the most comfortable networker in the world, she actually really gets to use this as her little agenda. So she's really put together a really nice little agenda for a quick, introduction and meeting. Here's an architecture firm. Obviously, from an architecture perspective, images, projects are really so important. So they chose to really make one of the most dominant parts of this presentation their information on some of their projects, their look and feel. It's how they get to show off their creativity. And I like also, they were a little bit more creative. So they started with the who we are. Well, they're an all-in-one architecture and landscape architecture, civil engineering firm, okay? They're a powerhouse, boom. They're bold, starts to tell me about their firm. their personalities lifting off the page immediately. Talks about their years of experience, obviously impressive, and then that they also have that young mindset, which everybody wants to make sure that they have a fresh new perspective. So I really applaud them for how they positioned their bullet points, which add up to their value statement. On their certifications, very straightforward, not too much that has to be taken into there, but they also did include their DUNS, their Dun and Bradstreet information, which I thought was really great. At the bottom, they just simply chose to have everybody kind of go to their website. Okay, another little, I thought that was a really great little use of space and information. I love Nakama Enterprises because they provide some really.
All righty. Well, we're going to come back to them in just a second. Kimberly, let's start with you if we could. So I'm curious, and I'm going to mess up the person running the video, so don't hate me. But I wanted to ask you about the architecture firm. So the second one that we saw. There you go. What thoughts do you have on this card, and how does it compare to what you're looking for at Bank of America?
Yeah, so I would say, generally at Bank of America, what we're looking for in a capability statement is really orienting ourselves to the company. And, I heard a few comments made earlier that I just want to kind of reiterate, regardless of the example on the screen, but some of the comments that the other panelists have made, I think are really true. One of them being about the different codes, the commodity codes. And making sure that you really customize those to, whatever company or government entity you're trying to sell to, because that'll help either get that orientation done more quickly, or in the case of Bank of America, we do not rely heavily on those types of codes. I'd be interested if our other panelists from PepsiCo in the private sector does, but sometimes there's a lot of real estate used on those codes, which is somewhat high level and not super useful for us at Bank of America. One of the other things I heard on feedback from a prior one was really leading with your capability. And I think this example does a good job at that. We know usually at the supplier diversity team as the first group to see these capability statements. And we of course know that, you're a diverse in business, right? That's how you got into our hands. In this case, we know that you're LGBTQ owned, right? So we know that already. Let's get to the brass tacks and really talk about what you do. So that way it makes it easier for us to orient ourselves to your company and provide these types of details to the appropriate stakeholders across the company that are really going to care most about what your differentiators are, what you're able to do, because that's what they are responsible for, right? So just kind of wanted to reiterate those couple comments that were made from the prior groups. And then the other thing I would say specific on this one, and also the marketing one that was mentioned, is I do like the use of graphics where they could tell a story, right? So in this case, there's a lot of real estate used for graphics. I don't know how much I would end up using, but definitely using some level of graphic to tell the story. So here's a good example of that, as well as the branded merchandise example that we had earlier. It really helps us quickly orient ourselves to what you do.
Kimberly, if I could stay with you for just a second.
Yeah.
One of the things that we tell our members, our certified businesses, is to, as Paul said earlier, don't try to be everything to everyone. So when I look at this business as a someone who knows nothing, and I would say, where should this business be or where should this vendor be pursuing business? And I would think, Chevron, obviously Bear County, the folks that we have on the meeting today, and maybe even PepsiCo, But I wouldn't think this would be a great fit for a Bank of America.
Mhm.
Am I right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, I think that that's a great question. There's a great value into knowing who you're selling to and where you sit within their supply chain. So for a company like Bank of America, of course, we use architecture services, right? We're building admin and retail facilities across the country. However, we don't contract or procure those directly. So when I see something like this, it's 2, 3, maybe sometimes 4 layers deep within our supply chain, just based on how we contract, right? Because our core competency, unlike some of my peers representing the government sector, is not building, right? So for us, it's several layers deep in the supply chain. I may have an opportunity to facilitate an introduction with who we call our primes within the space, right? Who we actually would contract with directly, but it's not as kind of hot of a referral, I guess you would say, or as hot of an introduction as something that we procure directly, because there I have more control and I could actually go to the business stakeholders across the company. So I think that's a really good point, and something that I would encourage all of the everyone on this line to think about is, okay, who are my target customers? And if I do want to be engaged in, say, architecture and design for Bank of America, is Bank of America my target? Or are they going through large real estate companies and my target actually is a large real estate company and it's not Bank of America? So that was a great question.
Excellent. Well, thank you. So let's go back and let's go to Logan. So Logan, you are in this business, correct? Not the architecture one, the promotional products. So tell us, what you think of this card and what you have seen work for you, what you might do differently.
Sure. So Logan, my pronouns are he, him, his. Happy to be here. And my company is Outbranding Promos, so we do promotional products as well. I would say in any of these, regardless of the space that you're playing in, make sure that you're leading with your value add and what differentiates you, right? Like this, you have to be prepared that if you're having a face-to-face meeting, hopefully, or at least virtually face-to-face these days, that you get a chance to have that interaction and kind of start a relationship there, and then put a face to what you're doing and having more words around it. But be prepared that this is also going to get passed on to the actual key stakeholders, decision makers. So you need to lead with what it actually is that you do that differentiates you from everyone else. So when I look at this particular one, the 4 bullet points, quite honestly, anybody could have experience, service, price, and products. That's not a key differentiator. And then the company profile continues on with, again, just statement of fact of what it is that they do, but not the value that they add. So I would say don't dedicate as much space to just stating facts. That is important because it does need to be on there. However, it could be done more succinctly. And then clients. So being that if you're in the marketing space or if you're in a space, the architecture one, they're using more pictures and whatnot. I think that took up a little bit too much space. However, if you're in marketing or something related to that, use logos. That's what you're in the business of using. So that's what we use for key clients. We use logos, and then, very recognizable. You don't have to read it. And also on here, it's got it reiterated under the projects. You can see it's once again, Olivia, Warner Brothers. So it's reused and it's just taking up a little bit more space. So what I do like is that using the logos for the affiliations, right? And also key tip here, if you are LGBTQ, or excuse me, it's not, Q is actually not part of the certification. If you're LGBT and you're getting BE certified, that's fantastic. We love that. Also, highly, highly recommend check out and see what other certifications you might qualify for. So in this particular profile, she's saying she's woman-owned. Get woman-owned certified. That would be another one. WBE certification would be awesome. And the codes. I also have the codes on there. I think most of us do. I usually just assume that that is like a keyword search if it happens to come up in somebody's email. I don't give a lot of real estate to that, and I kind of put it in a smaller font because most people, to Kim's point, if you're interacting with them, they're gonna already put you in the right spot or category, if you will. So that's my personal belief. Again, it depends upon the space you're playing in. If you're in more of a construction space, you better nail those codes and make sure that you're really customizing specifically. And then services, right? So do make sure you have it on there. But here's another one that I see quite often. We are really awesome at what we do individually, and we get in the jargon. But remember who you're interfacing with, supplier diversity folks, or those that are bringing you into a system or a new company. They are not as familiar with that jargon. So maybe the end customer is and who's making the decisions, but the in between, they need to understand what you do. So make sure you're using words that are actually applicable to consumers, everyday consumers, and not really spun up on, if you're in architecture or promotional products, right? Add specialty services. You won't ever hear me walk around saying that specifically. So, I use things like swag and whatnot. Having projects on there, really awesome. And also, again, the key clients. I think that that's a really great thing because that shows what you've done, what your capabilities are, who else has vetted you. And also from a capability standpoint, you can say like maybe the quantity, or the dollar amount. It depends upon what space you might be in. But if one of these projects was 100,000 or 400,000 items, that would be a good way to indicate to everyone what your capabilities are. So yes, you may be a small business, but if you have the ability to scale at such a level, then that will impart that knowledge. Adding the DUNS number is also a key thing. And the contact info. I like the contact info on the bottom of this. I think that's really great. The architecture one, it said go to our website for additional things. Think about this. It's kind of, we're stepping in between like analog and digital. Yes, a website is great. However, you've already got their attention. So it's the equivalent of if you're already on somebody's website and it requires like 3 more clicks to actually get to the meat and potatoes or contacting you, you don't want to do that. You'll lose people. So having the contact info like you see here, I think is absolutely key. So yes, there is a website, there's phone number and email, but everything's already there. You don't have to go anywhere else or do any other work. So
Excellent.
Those are my high-level thoughts.
Thank you. By the way, did anybody else notice that company profile is listed twice on this? It's at the top and it's at the bottom again, which I thought was kind of interesting when the bottom was just their years in business. So thank you all very much. We have one more that we're going to look at, which is Nakama, which I hope I said correctly. And we're going to go to the video now.
Okay, another little really interesting services as well. And I thought what she provided as far as her basically their structure, she chose to have her value statement being a pledge. Work in the best interest to partner. Okay, if somebody tells me that they want to partner, I think that's a pretty strong, good, well-grounded attribute and style. And then bottom line, here she is adding, here's how I can help you. We can help you meet your diversity supplier targets, which many times companies are. They want to fulfill their subcontractor needs for state, federal, and private sector contracts. And, she's in a commodity where, bottom line, she's aerial photography and construction photography. It's a limited market, but, it's very price competitive. And she needed to kind of basically lift it out of the realm of, it's not just about price for her. Obviously, it's about quality. But she wants to make sure that she adds a certain value of making sure that you can meet your goals and so forth. And, she really, I thought her information management was attractive and quite nice.
All righty. And no, we're not going to watch The Office. So Trung, I don't want to insult everybody else by saying we saved the best for last, but you know, I do like to suck up to it whenever I can. So what did you think of this, of the last one?
Sure. So I don't know about everyone else, but I was surprised that, well, first of all, as I was reading it, I was like, well, what do you do? And it took me until I got to the very bottom that I realized, oh, you're an aerial photographer and you do something in construction. So I was going through all this. I got to the NAICS codes. I'm like, I don't know what any of those mean. So unlike the one right before, it had the NAICS codes and the description. So that could have clued me in. But if I certainly don't have NAICS codes memorized. Um, so that was a little confusing. I think the other thing that was surprising was she's in photography. There were no pictures. Like, what happened? Like, right? It was like, ooh, this could be a like really great drone footage or something like that. I didn't get any of that. I was like, well, show me what you do, right? Um, and so that was kind of a struggle for me. So I really felt, and this happens a lot, right? To Logan's point, right? You sometimes get into the jargon and you don't stop to think like, who am I talking to, right? So on the one hand, you know, supplier diversity professionals, you know, we try to learn as much as we can about the various commodities that we are supporting, but there is no way, right, that, you know, David or myself or Kimberly will be able to be these experts, or Renee, right, to say like, oh, we know everything about construction or everything about how even consulting goes, right? And so it's really important that there are those clues and indicators for us to say, okay, this is what I do. And, you know, like Renee said, like, and Kimberly said, and this is who should take me to, right? So in some ways, you know, we are your advocate, but we can't advocate for you if we don't know who we're supposed to take your information to, right? So I think of, you know, all the examples, this one was the one that I actually struggled the most with, because it took me so long to figure out what they did. And then, you know, again, I think it was great in terms of the layout, in terms of like, okay, this is how this worked. And I love the pledge as well. But as far as like the differentiators, those sorts of things, I just was not feeling it or seeing it. So I really struggled with that. And I think I wanted to circle back with a couple comments, you know, that my peers made earlier around, for instance, the NAICS codes. So you can see here, right? No idea what those NAICS codes are. And the other thing I wanted to highlight was the supplier diversity comment, right? So I think, you know, to everyone's point here, you know, if you're meeting with a supplier diversity professional, you don't have to highlight that you're a diverse company. That said, I also want to sort of give the advice to LGBTBEs that diversity is not your differentiator. Like, unless you're consulting in the diversity space, right? But your diversity, your being LGBT does not make a point of difference for, you know, my peers when it comes to, so are they a good photographer? That doesn't matter if you're LGBT, right? That doesn't tell me what your point of difference is. They want to know, you know, who have they photographed for, or, you know, who have they supported? And I think that's really important to highlight for, you know, especially folks that have just become certified. That's important. And the other thing is that I know as we've gone through these statements, a lot of folks are thinking, wow, I'm going to have to rewrite my entire capability statement for company to company. And that's not necessarily true. What I think has been really effective for people that I meet with is they will take the same statement and walk me through it and then circle the things that are important to me, right? It is very important that you control that conversation and direct the eye for the person that you're talking to. So, you know, on some of the other examples, like the premiums examples, they might want to highlight, you know, any of the food and beverage companies that they've done business with, right? And they could say, oh, I've done business with Kraft, or I've done business with, you know, Kellogg's, you know, when they're talking to a PepsiCo, or if they're talking to Chevron. I've also worked with these large industrial companies that use this, or familiar logos, so that even with as much information as is there, it can be easily translatable and telegraphed to the person that you're talking to, and then they can then take that to the person that they're sharing that with as well. So I think those are the things that I wanted to highlight. And then If we can go back to the premiums one of the things that I struggle with, and I think probably Kimberly and David struggle with too, is so notice on this NAICS codes list, you've got graphic design, other design services, and then out of the blue, there's this HR consulting, right? So that would be a red flag to me because I'm like, well, how are you actually providing HR consulting services? I think you can provide your premiums for HR consulting, but I don't think that you as a company are doing HR consulting services, right? So those are the sorts of things that you want to be really thoughtful about because the NAICS codes can be really sort of wonky when it comes to how people are searching for them. And I know that when I'm looking through databases, I will actually turn down suppliers when they can't get their NAICS codes in order, right? So if they're all over the place, this whole thing about being everything to everyone, here's an example of like, I don't know how you do that, right? These other things I understand, design, even advertising, but that one in particular was like, I don't understand how this fits. So sorry, that was kind of a long set of feedback, but I think it's really important for suppliers to understand that we are looking at your information.
I'm curious on this one, and Logan had mentioned some things on it as well. But I was wondering, the clients and the projects. Well, I know it's not really redundant, but as I looked at this, I thought, isn't there a better way of putting those two things together without taking up this much room? Maybe images, maybe logos, something. It just seems like, again, it seems almost redundant.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I was hoping, I could get more details. So this complete rebrand on the CCOR project, I'm like, okay, so what does that mean? Was it, you created a new logo, there was a whole new brand identity? It means different things to different people. So I wasn't sure what that meant. And then, the gamer in me said, oh, Capcom Entertainment, Resident Evil, but what did you do? Right. So I was like, did you design the box? Did you, what kind of swag did you present? What really innovative thing should I have seen from that I would want to take back to my team, right?
Mm-hmm. I also thought, when I was looking at this, I thought, okay, well, I know what Olivia is, but how many supply diversity folks are going to know that? And so if it's not recognizable, is it really important enough to put on here? And I will mention on the codes, and only because Paige Adams from PepsiCo, who I adore, mentioned it to me when we were talking about this project, is exactly what is on the fifth statement that we're looking at: a bunch of codes without what they mean. She said, like, I'm supposed to know what all the codes are. So I think that's almost a quote. So I think that's really important that you not just give the code, but what it means, because again, not everybody's going to know it. Yeah.
If I may, real quick, I know it's not my turn, but I just.
Oh no, it is about to be your turn, so go right ahead.
I can't resist. On the last one, I will tell you that, without being overly critical, and how would you know these things unless somebody told you? My number one sort of, I'll use the word pet peeve, but the thing that I am challenged with, and with capability statements, or even when I talk to people on the phone or meet them in person, is those that profess to help me meet my supplier diversity goals as a capability. That is not your job as a supplier to help me meet my goals. Your job is to help solve a business problem, and let me worry about my goals. And have you please worry about solving a problem for us, and our goals will take care of themselves. And I think leading with that is it sort of feels like pandering to me. And and again, I don't mean to be overly critical, but it is a real turnoff for me.
Well, none of these people are here, so we can be as overly critical as we like.
So Tony, can I add something too? This is Renee.
Yeah.
On the promotional type products and anyone who has a catalog, it'd be nice if you insert your QR code, because you might have 1,000 items that we would need to see, and we can't really get it through your website and make it easier for us. And when you select pictures or photographs on any of these capability statements, put the photograph that's similar to what you're bidding on, so we can get an idea of your work. If the end user, if you're bidding on architectural projects and you did design for front entrance or for signs on facilities, put that picture. Don't put the picture of the landscape across the street of the whole building. Try to capture and show us what you've done with those pictures in your photographs. And then even in your QR code on your website, put it to link, or either put your social media squares, because we're going in looking at your social media spots, especially on promotional items. If you have pictures where your clients are with you and you're having fun with your promotional items, that's a good way to market yourself.
Excellent. I love that. Well, do any of our panelists have any other comments on those 5 examples? And I appreciate you all jumping in, because that's what I was hoping for. Then let's move on to the speed round, shall we? No, just kidding. So Renee, I want to start with you and see if what are the differences for suppliers with working for government versus private corporations, both just overall work, but of course we're talking about capability statements. What should they be looking at?
Well, one, we know that the rules are different. You might have 4 different decision makers depending on the industry that you're representing in the governmental sector, whether it's state, local, or federal government. Or the private sector, the decision maker may be a little bit easier in your supplier diversity office. So depending on if you're submitting on professional services, that may be one process versus construction. And if you're at the prime level versus the tier 1 or tier 2 level, as we call tier 1 less than prime, but the private sector calls tier 1 prime. So understanding the language of the industries and who you're trying to do business with and where you fit in the supply chain. How do you make contact in the supply chain? And then making sure that when you register to do business, that you give us all of your information. It's a little bit different on what we ask for versus maybe what the private sector asks for, but we all want to know what you do. Like Dave says, what is your capacity? What's your capabilities? And who you've done with it before? And you haven't, if you're a startup, why should we take a risk on you when we the indemnification insurance is so different? Kind of come to us and kind of explain to us why we should take that risk.
Okay. Just curious, our folks, Dave and Kimberly and Trung, do you all have experience or knowledge looking at both private and government?
Hey, this is Kimberly. So I actually see this in inverse a lot. So particularly in certain industries like manufacturing or construction, or in engaging with some of our veteran partners, where they, work heavily with the government. There's really an assumption that the private and the public sectors work similarly. And that's just really not true. So again, just reiterating the point, it's important to know who you're selling to, not only what their terminology is, but what, a question that was asked to me prior regarding where you sit within their supply chain, right? So another good example of this from Bank of America's perspective might be, say, a cleaning products company. Of course, we use a lot of cleaning products, but for us, that's 3 or 4 levels deep in our supply chain. So that's one of the areas I see confusion around, is, knowing who to sell to in the private sector. Another thing that I've run into is I know that a lot of governmental bids, particularly in construction and things like that, will actually be publicized prior. And that's something that we're prohibited from doing. As internally, that's not part of our policy. So we aren't able to source diverse businesses that way, or share information in that way. And then the other component is the decision-making component. So You may see more common to have regionalized bids within government. So for example, the state of Texas, whereas within the private sector, a lot of that is centralized. So there's a little bit less flexibility to regionalize or more bias to centralize based on our process, our cost, our risk appetite, whatever it might be, which makes it a much different conversation, particularly for companies that are still within that regional phase or growth phase. So those are things that I would think about and that I see quite often that companies need to educate themselves on if they're selling to both private and public sector.
Excellent. Dave, anything?
Well, I just think one of the things to be aware of, I'm certainly no expert in this particular field. I mean, my experience is primarily in the, in the private sector, obviously, but Chevron and I'm guessing many of the other companies, at least some of the other organizations here, themselves are contractors to the federal government. I can tell you for sure Chevron is. So, that gives us, some different business drivers to consider, different kinds of businesses. We submit, as I see Trump shaking his head, that we submit a subcontracting plan to the federal government, which describes, articulates our commitment to utilize small businesses, and to the extent we make good on those commitments, our contracts with the government can be at risk. So we are particularly interested in those kinds of businesses that the government requires us to utilize. So that would include, the service disabled veteran-owned businesses, for example, women-owned small businesses, hub zones, and so forth. So those are specific types of business. So I guess my point in all that is understanding your customer overall and their role in providing services to the federal government. And can give you some insights about how anxious they may be or how likely they will. And often some of those kinds of businesses can be more challenging, to find suppliers in. And so, for instance, a service disabled veteran owned business, is gonna get some special attention from companies who are doing business with the federal government.
Trung, anything to add?
Yeah, I think it is just, you really do need to do your homework when it comes to the companies, because we don't all interact with, for instance, government agencies the same way. Technically, PepsiCo has no government contracts, right? We sell into their commissaries, but we do not, we're not selling directly to the government. So we don't have those kinds of sort of parameters for the way that we sell our products as well. So I think it is really incumbent on the company to determine, who is it that they're talking to and how should they prepare for those conversations.
I want to make a quick note on government and also recognize the Houston LGBT Chamber, Houston being the first municipality in Texas to recognize the LGBTBE certification. So we're both very proud and very jealous of Tammy and the work that she's been doing. But we are both North Texas, San Antonio, and Austin are all working with our local governments to try and get that as well. And it'll probably be a cold day, where when we get it from the state, but hope springs eternal. So anyhow, so there may be some good local government contracting available in the near future. So we have a question from the chat. Paul mentioned this early in his presentation about your capability statement, keeping it to 1 page and 2 pages if you have to. And the question is, are suppliers somehow, is there a ding against them, if you will, if their statement is more than 1 page? And let's start with Trung.
Let me get off mute. I would say no. I mean, personally, it's not the end of the world if it's more than 1 page, if it's useful information, right? So I don't remember whose point it was earlier, but if there's additional information in there, if you want to give me a folder that has, really good samples, great. That makes sense to me. But if you are a consulting company and you can't succinctly describe what you do on 1 page or again, 2 pages, both sides, I'm fine. One of the issues that many supplier diversity folks have at these shows is we don't like to take a lot of stuff back with us, right? So that is one of the issues that we run into. So even those samples, I mean, I have to have a really good justification for loading up my suitcase, going back with, additional materials for folks. And then now it's even rarer, right? So I've got folks in Dallas and in Chicago where all I can do is like hold up the sample in a video to them and say, like, isn't this amazing? So think about it that way. But if you can clearly justify why it's more than 1 page, that's fine, right? But it is one of those things where think about how the person that you're interacting with will use that information.
Okay. Do any of the other panelists people get points off, if you will, if they go to 2 sides instead of just one?
Yeah. Tony, I would say points off, no, but I think front and back is a maximum, and I think the primary information should be on the first page. Think of that second page as like an appendix, if you will. So if there's some additional detail, clarifying information that would help make the information on the primary page more understandable or clear, I think that's fine.
Anybody else?
I would say, depending on what your industry is, that's not, I can't kind of make that a blanket statement, because 2 pages at the most, depending on what you're bidding on, kind of what you're selling, what your specialties are. We like to see 1, easy to photocopy, easy to share. But it's not a penalty if you have more than 1, if you're really trying to tell us your story.
Logan, I'm curious, you're a small business owner. So I'm curious what advice you would have to other certified businesses that are with us today in regards to capability statements.
So with respect to like the 2 pages versus 1 page, it's kind of, think about it as like YouTube, right? Can you have a 5-minute video? You sure can. Will people watch it till the end? No, they won't. So being short, sweet, succinct, brevity is everything. Get to the point. Now, again, if you are very technical and there's technical stuff that you need to add and it's like intricate, that sort of thing, then yes, if it's very technical, I would say you can go a little bit longer. But keep it to 1 page. There's very few businesses that I would say actually warrant having 2 pages. Attention span is short and time is everything. When it comes to capability statements, high level, make sure, again, you're leading with your value add. Yes, we are all certified and supplier diversity professionals. They love to see certifications. However, that's, again, as Trung has said, that's not what differentiates you. And it also doesn't mean that you're going to get the contract, right? First and foremost, every single one of us as business owners has to lead and execute and do what we do well. And that's how we can best serve ourselves, but also those that are going to come behind us, and keep everybody engaged with us as small business owners is executing well and focusing on that. So with the capability statements, focus on your value add capabilities, and then make sure you're, of course, showcasing those certifications, but as a side note more than anything.
Excellent. I only paid attention to the first minute, but I'm pretty sure the rest of it was really good too. So I just had to, sorry.
Yeah.
No, thank you. So we have time for one last question, because we do need to move on to our pitch. Is that right? Am I okay time-wise?
Yeah, let's do one more question, Tony. Did you get the media
Maybe,
question?
yeah. And maybe there'll be 2 more, but we'll see. So if I'm being generous. Okay, so here's the question. We have a couple of media companies on the call, and the question to our panelists is, in your experience, have you received a capability statement from a media company regarding advertising? So they're selling advertising, and have you seen capability statements around that. I'm going to spin the wheel and start with Kimberly.
Yeah, so the question is, have we seen capability statements with media and advertising capabilities?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, certainly we have, right? There's marketing and advertising agencies that that are trying to penetrate Bank of America's supply chain, right? And there's a lot of diverse companies out there that really play in that industry. I think one of the things that I would say I see as a common downfall within that industry particularly is I get the capability statement and it's so high level that I don't know what their specialty is, right? Is your specialty graphic design? Is your specialty the actual creative side of marketing? Or are you more of a PR firm? Are you more of a staffing side? You know, what is your specialty? Because a lot of them kind of come off as marketing generalists, which may be great for a smaller company, but when you're selling to a large corporation like Bank of America, if you're doing video production, there's one way I could take you. If you're doing creative design, there's another way. And they're all different business partners. Some of them we procure directly, some of them we don't. So we really need to understand what specifically you're doing, and that needs to be articulated really well. So particularly within that kind of marketing, advertising realm, I tend to see more high level, more buzzwords thrown out, and more generalist, which doesn't do much for us.
Yeah.
Renee, oh, go ahead, Tron.
I saw Leo had jumped in the chat about specifically what they sell, which is the advertising piece. And I think what I also struggle with, that Kimberly and maybe David can jump in here, is, you know, it's when we don't understand the apples to apples work that you're doing. So as you're pitching to a PepsiCo, a Chevron, a Bank of America, we need to know, as the supplier diversity professional, exactly how many eyes you would have available to you, right? In terms of who you're selling that to and some of the projects that you've worked with in the past. Because we need to understand, you know, that, oh, you've taken this brand and, you know, gotten them into these programs or onto these newspapers and into these, you know, regions. We need to understand that so that we can say, okay, got it. So I need to take you to my Northeast person who does X, Y, and Z. Or, oh, okay, this is a space we've never been in before. I need to take you into this other area, right? In terms of the type of media, et cetera. So when you're specifically talking about selling advertising, for us, we need to be able to go back and say, okay, these are the categories of brands that this company has sold in before. These are the various area. I can't think of what the word is, but like, is it digital? Is it newspaper? Is it, you know, magazine? Like all those things we need to understand, because again, we're not the experts in every piece of this field. But if you can provide us with like a direct example, right, and say, hey, I've sold, you know, I've solved, you know, Oreo's problem around how to get more eyes in the LGBT community, because now I figured out that they need to sell more to, you know, the Advocate magazine or whatever like that. So sorry if I'm a little literal there, Leo, but I hope that helps, because for us, we oftentimes are caught between the marketing team who's like, we know everything, and I'll always make fun of my marketing team. And they know that, right? And they're like, oh, we know everything. And it's like, do you though? But anyway, but if we're not armed with that answer, right, we can't go to them and say, hey, you really should look at this in a different way. I think that's one of our struggles. And then also the fact that, you know, they're like buddy with a lot of our agencies of record, right?
Yeah.
So the Omnicoms, et cetera. So that'll be the first hurdle you need to get past, is like, do you play well in the sandbox with them, right? So that, you know, like, yes, we already do work with them and we're interested in some of this stuff. And we've all heard it before as supplier diversity professionals. So trust me, we feel your pain. But then I think on the other side is, if you can show us like, this is your secret entrance or your secret sauce to, you know, what you guys do, then absolutely that's what we need to see, right? And we're like, got it. Because nobody's talked to me about, you know, LGBT and, you know, Black owned businesses in this space, in this area, and this is how many eyes are on them, right? That's what has to be delivered to us. Sorry, I kind of rambled, but I hope that helped.
Well, Trung, I'd like to talk to your marketing team about the flat Matthew McConaughey. Renee, so you don't advertise to consumers necessarily. So is working with a publication selling advertising, is that something that would fit one of your needs?
So all governmental entities provide services, and we have to communicate public information. So it's just the opposite. We're not selling to the public. We're trying to get the public to receive services or come to us to get those services. Kind of the way we look at it for public information. You can take whether it's the COVID vaccine, how are we pushing the information out to underserved communities? So if you come to us and you have a specialty for the constituent versus the consumer by targeted neighborhoods, those are the things, especially if it's crisis management or crisis services. Put that in that capability statement. If you've done and you've had success in different communities around the country, if you have different communities in your same city, highlight those, but do your homework on what is that public agency's role. Because if you come to a municipality such as a city versus a county versus a state, you might not even, it might not even be received because they know you don't know the space and what we're trying to promote or to sell. For instance, we have a sheriff's department where the city has the police department. Your proposal comes to us and says SAPD. I don't think so. Make sure you don't cut and paste and, and it's more targeted with what you're trying to do.
Cutting and pasting. Hey, I have one last question, and I'm going to start with Dave on this. I know I said one last. I'm famous for one more thing. I'm like Columbo, for those of you old enough to remember that. Tina's old enough. Very good. So anyhow, one last thing. So we've talked obviously a lot about these capability statements. So what's next? So you've developed this great capability statement. Is there a way that you would recommend that folks use that either in their pitch or somehow? I mean, they may have it perfect, but what do they do with it then? And because it's such an easy question, I'm going to start with Dave. So.
Well, I'm not quite sure how to take that, but I'm teasing. First of all, I'm going to say that capability statement is a really important thing, and I appreciate the fact that we've taken the time to, think of it as a resume, right? A resume for your business, and it is as important as a capability statement is important as a resume for someone seeking a job. And in some ways, these businesses are seeking jobs, and so it's a critical element of that. I think a capability statement, I think of it as pre-read. As you engage with a company, I am here to create opportunities for small and diverse businesses looking for opportunities at Chevron. And so I am open to meeting with potential suppliers in any number of ways, whether it be electronically, face to face. I mean, in conferences, hopefully when we get back to those days, via phone, Zoom, Teams, whatever the case may be. That capability statement is what is the tool, is arming me to introduce your company to people who are potential users of the product or service. So the next step is, get that in my hands or someone on my team's hands, and think of it as a way to introduce that, arming or equipping me to share your capabilities with people who are going to be making decisions. I mean, one of the, I'm not so sure it's been said out loud, but the sad truth is that, speaking for my company, I don't get to decide who we hire, who we use, and who we buy from. My job is to act as a connector between the various supplier communities and the people who are potential users of the goods or services. So that, and the capability statement is a critical component in allowing me to introduce you and your company to potential users. And so the next step is, at least in our world, is fairly straightforward. send it to me, get it to me, uh, mail it to me, however you can get that information to you. I need that so that first I can understand what you do, and it allows me to introduce you. And the whole idea, the whole goal is to generate enough interest amongst the buyers so that they're willing to meet with you and have a more in-depth conversation about your products and services.
Logan, so yeah, obviously you've done one. How have you used it to promote your business?
Well, usually that's in the follow-ups, right? So usually going networking in person is how it's been in the past, and now it's doing the meetings, participating in that. So participate in as many events as possible, whether it be virtual or in person, when we get back to that. I agree with that. And then if that's in the follow-up, right? Usually it's like, okay, send me your capability statement. And so what I personally do, so I didn't ever give my elevator pitch. Usually I do that, but I was trying to be mindful of being asked to speak here. So my company's Outbranding Promos. We can put your logo on anything, and we give over 20% of our profits back to charity every year. And the value that we add to large corporations is that we provide concierge level of service. Doesn't cost you anything extra. We just save you time. So that's the elevator pitch that I lead in with, get into the conversation, see and really target my conversation to what I, ask questions, see what their needs might be, answer those questions, and then follow up with a capability statement. And I will say that, yes, I do it in a PDF, but I also am mindful and I do it in the body of the email. So I'll put in like keywords and our differentiators and whatnot, and I'll put that in the body of the email, sometimes below my signature. And then that way it's extra searchable, just to make sure, because not everything in PDF does get picked up by keyword searches, but that way it's in there. And then again, you have to have it really dialed in, make sure you have other people look at it, proofreading it, and then it makes sense to somebody that is not in your business. Because sometimes we get those glasses on and we're like, yeah, this totally makes sense. And then somebody else that is not familiar, they're like, I have no idea what that means. And then it's also required when you're signing up. There's very few these days where you go into internal systems and or you're getting with it, put into their system where they're not asking for a capability statement, because it is also, they're looking to have that be able to be searchable from their online aspect, like supplier.io, that sort of thing. There's a lot of companies that are using that these days for their systems. So it's absolutely necessary. You cannot really effectively run your business without a capability statement. So it's a must.
So Trung, get out of my head. I was just thinking that I was going to say, my assumption is, and you're the experts, my assumption is that your capability statement is a living, breathing entity, and it's going to change. And so you need to make sure that you keep it up to date and continue to send it to people so they have the most recent information. But you said it in far fewer words in the chat, so thank you. Thank you for that. Renee.
Well, we like to see them as pre-read. So when you register, because if you are going to send it to us to follow up, we call it, you get that first shot. So if we can get in your supplier portal, when you register as a firm, you load it up, you attach it. So when that end user pulls your record and your information, it's already there. It gives you more time to have a conversation, because we hope to have pre-read what you're providing to us. So I would always encourage you to get them in to anyone that you can. One of the things we're seeing right now is that because of cybersecurity, most emails are going to spam if they have an attachment as a PDF. So like Logan was saying, figure out how to put it in your email. Put the words and most text or content in your email. As few as links as possible, because most of the federal side, they're not taking any kind of attachments. State and local government, we have different rules that because of cybersecurity right now. And it's really causing a problem, especially for a lot of our small business. because they're not getting through. So just make sure that we try to get that information out.
Trung, anything you'd like to add?
Just really quickly, I know that many suppliers kind of roll their eyes when we say, hey, please register in our portal, but we really do look. Like I know that it's a chore for some folks, so by all means be very targeted about who you are registering with, so you're not just spending like hours wasted like throwing spaghetti at the wall. But if you know you want to get in with a few companies, make sure you are going in and updating your information, because this just happened recently where we had a corrugate supplier who now is doing paperboard. They updated their information in their portal, in our portal. I got flagged with like, hey, so and so updated their information, and I'm like, who's that? And then I looked them up. Sure enough, I said, oh, this is good. We need to start this conversation over, because I only thought they did corrugate. We have a new RFP for paperboard. Let's talk, right? So those are the sorts of things that as a supplier, you should think about, like, how else can I bring something new to the table? What do they need to know about me this year? I mean, it can be something very, straightforward. Like Logan and I try to catch up every year talking about what they've been up to, right? And sort of like, hey, what are you expanding on? What are we interested in? What are you seeing in the space? And honestly, that's another great opportunity, is if you know your space really well, supplier diversity folks love hearing like what we need to know, right? And Logan has shared many times, like, well, this is really how this works. So I've learned so much from you, Logan. Thank you.
Try to keep it real.
Right.
I will say, to Trung's point, that it be targeted in where you're registering, so you're not wasting hours, like a ton of hours, although perhaps some folks have that time. I will say, in the last year, particularly actually the last 6 to 8 months, a lot of companies have actually been really using that, more so than ever before, because we're in this virtual format now. But I think there's also a much bigger true focus on actually using, sorry, I'll bounce it through anybody in particular on this call under the bus, but to actually using minority-owned companies. There's actually, it's really happening at a deeper level and more so than I've ever seen before. So we've been invited to, beginning of more conversations that way than I've ever seen before. So it is worthwhile at this point for sure.
Kimberly, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think Logan hit on a couple of things that I just would double down on. So one of them that he mentioned is Supplier IO. And that is something that we certainly use at Bank of America from a supplier diversity perspective to search for diverse suppliers. And it's a great example of really being able to maximize how you use your time instead of having to go to all of these different websites and register, really prioritize things like Supplier IO that could hit multiple corporations at once. So I think that was really spot on. I know personally at Bank of America right now, we do not use our registration as much as I would like to. And you could probably tell that, if we're being honest, if you go on the registration site, because we don't ask the right level of in-depth questions. So that's something that we want to move towards, but you could tell who uses it or who doesn't by the quality of questions that they're asking. The other thing that was mentioned was an elevator pitch. And Logan kind of gave his, which was great. But I think that, something that we, that I would challenge everyone to think about with the capabilities statement to get you to that what's next point, because you don't always get to the what's next from a capability statement, but to get you there is treat it like your elevator pitch. So if you were in an elevator with someone for 60 seconds, they were a decision maker for whatever product or service you're selling, you wouldn't talk about high level buzzwords and NAICS codes and things like that, right? You would cut to the chase. And you would say, hey, this is what I do. This is how I've been able to add value to one of your peers, whether that have been drive savings, save time, etc. You would do it almost like a mini 2-sentence case study and say, hey, I would love to tell you more as they're leaving. And I don't know why so often in capability statements, we don't treat it that way. And instead we get stuck in, here are my certifications, here are my NAICS codes, here are some buzzwords, because that's what we see happening, but that's not how you would treat it if you were actually in the elevator with someone. So I think, really treating it that way will help you get to the next step. And that's where I've seen more success.
Excellent. So just hope you're in a slow elevator in a tall building. All right, well, that's all the time we have. I want to thank our panelists for giving us so much of their time today and their expertise. I truly appreciate it, as well as I appreciate my peers at the other chambers who are on the call today. I am going to pass the baton to Melissa, who's the board president for the San Antonio LGBT Chamber of Commerce. And thank you all for being with us today, and have a good day. Take it away, Melissa.
Got to unmute myself there. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, panelists, for answering all those questions. We are next. I know that David has been waiting patiently to give his pitch. We've talked several things about pitches already, and especially the elevator pitch. It's always great to have the right pitch when you're talking about your company and being able to, in a few seconds, just to mention what your company is all about. So a few of the pitch rules and guidelines. We've talked about, must be certified. If you want to be a pitch, if you want to do a pitch on our next roundtable, you must be certified LGBTBE business. Participate in the full LGBTBE roundtable program on the pitch day. And it's about a 5-minute pitch is what you want to give. Only one presenter from each participating company. The judges have 10 minutes for feedback and questions and answers. We encourage you to ask clarifying questions and engage with the judges after your pitch. There's no presentation. If you don't have a presentation, then there's no problem, okay? The program is designed to be informal, to provide real-time feedback for the company's pitch. If you're not speaking, please mute your microphone. Our tech team will be online and be able to help with this as well. The moderator will provide verbal warnings at 1 minute and 30 seconds remaining, so that way you don't go over your time. And then it's a judgment-free zone. Okay, it's help you out. It's designed to help you out, and enhance your pitch and grow your company. So there's no need to worry about, if I got it right or not, and so forth, because you'll definitely get some feedback as well. And most importantly, let's just have some fun. Okay. So David is our CEO and founder of Axer Strategies for today. And if you're interested in the future, before David starts here, if you're interested in the future of giving a pitch, talk to your local chamber and let them know that you want to do that. And then they'll get in contact with us and the Texas chambers, and we'll get everything set up for you. But next, we want to know further ado, David Estrada, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. Thank you, David. It's all yours.
Okay, let me start my timer. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I know that we have the full capability statement, but I'm going to zoom in on sections of this so that you guys can see it better. Again, my name is David Estrada. I am CEO and founder of marketing agency Axer Strategies. And I've received a lot of really good helpful tips in this presentation, but I'm hoping for some additional feedback and maybe some specific tweaks on my capability statement to make this better. So thank you so much for your feedback in advance. But jumping right in, Axer Strategies is built to be innovative and adaptable. Using the latest in data collection and analytics, we build and execute completely custom marketing plans for a fraction of the typical cost. Our focus is on getting our clients the best return on their marketing investment. Unlike traditional agencies, we keep hard costs low and partner with independent subject matter experts and specialists from our vetted network only as needed. Our model, in addition to our core team of marketing experts, we've built a vast network that brings specialized skills and years of experience to the table. But we've designed our business model so that you only pay for those experts if and when you need them. By providing flexible and customized solutions, Axer ensures your marketing dollars goes further and does more. Some of our marketing services include, of course, marketing strategy, consulting, analytics and reporting, content creation, local and SEO and technical SEO, search engine marketing like Google Ads, branding, website development, e-commerce development, iOS and Android development, video and photography, social media management, mass media buys that include print, radio, and billboard, public relations, event planning, and of course, customer relationship management. A couple of project examples that we thought would be great to showcase here is recently we've launched the Mexican IT and technology agency, Digital Hype, in the US. And the primary services that we applied to that account were strategy and so much more. We've also audited a Google Ads account and website to improve the return on investment and beat the competition on Google Ads. And that includes search engine marketing and some consulting. We've recently ran a winning campaign for coroner in a predominantly Republican county. And we had to, build the client from start to finish. So branding and social media was really where our focus was. We've connected an inventory system to an e-commerce platform in order to properly track orders and scale the business. That was primarily focused on e-commerce. We've optimized meta descriptions to track and increase organic traffic from search engines like Google and Bing. So primarily SEO and analytics. We've increased social media return on investment by setting up social shops and shoppable pins on platforms like Instagram and Pinterest. We've recently relaunched the website and set up all tracking, tags, and automated tools for that website. So web development, search engine optimization, and of course, customer relationship management. Some of our key clients that we thought would be great for this example would Digital Hype is that Mexican agency that I told you we've launched in the US. BreachRx, it's a cybersecurity SaaS platform. The Patterson Law Firm. Dustin Virus Art, a local artist who's commercializing his art through a digital platform. Of course, the Lindley for Coroner campaign that we won last year. Sesame Software that focuses on data warehouse and data management. Dallas Lightbulb and Roberts Camera, which are both e-commerce platforms. Again, my name is David Estrada. I am so happy to be here and sharing this capability statements with you because I think I could get some really valuable feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, David. We appreciate that. It's great. And I believe we are turning this over to Tammy.
All right. Lisa, just a quick question. Were we going to get any feedback from the panelists?
Yes, please. Let's make sure we get feedback. And Trung has
Okay.
to leave, so if he can go first, if he's still here.
Yep, I'm still here. Great.
Thank you.
No problem. Great job. I just really want to jump into two areas that I think will be that stood out for me that I wanted to give you some feedback on. One, as you're describing, your success in here, David, I'd like to see numbers. I think many of us have to go back to our counterparts to say this is why they're great, because they were able to get this many more people to convert, right? Even in the example of the Republican dominated county that you were working in, right? If there were some more tangible numbers there to say like this is what we were working against and this is how we succeeded. And then in those examples, I noticed that you kept on going back to highlighting a few of the same items. So I think it was like e-commerce and SEO. So I noticed that you do things like development, those sorts of things, and I did not see any of those examples. So that's fine. It's just be aware that, that may be a question that someone has if they're super interested in, that sort of development, that we'd want to see those kinds of examples. So if you want to go with a variety, go for it. Otherwise, I think you could have provided a couple other examples there. So
Thank you so much.
sure.
We can move to Renee. Did you want him to put his statement back up on the screen?
Yeah, if you could.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sorry.
So we can talk about it while we.
For
Thanks,
some
David.
reason, for some reason, I cannot see. So I cannot see you. I'm paying attention when I share my screen. It for some reason takes all of the other squares away. So
We get it. Yeah.
So I'm listening.
That's in the view at the top. I had to learn that long time ago. But can you make sure it's the whole, show the whole thing? I know we can't read it really, but I just wanted to talk about layout. It looks very good. And like he said, the numbers, I like to see, and I mentioned earlier, you drop your QR code on there, back to your website, because it'll help us with doing the research about you. Couple of things that the campaign, something that you've done probably is remarkable that you're probably not highlighting enough. Is that a coroner, like forensic, like dead people?
Yes.
Okay. So for you to be involved in that type of race and you're claiming that type of race, that's historical. Nobody looks at that. Nobody cares about that race. So that type of elected official, that's something that is probably a hard fought, often overlooked, that you could probably figure out a way to better position that.
Okay.
Because we all have them, especially in county government. We all have them across the country. It is a unique marketplace for something for you that you're letting us know that you were involved in and you had success.
Yes.
And that's a target audience for you. That's a capability statement just for coroners.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, forensic science type people.
Awesome.
Excellent advice. Dave, do you want to jump in here?
Sure. David, thanks. You did a great job and spoke with great confidence and passion. And it's not easy to, to put yourself out there. So I'll start off by congratulating you for, having the courage to, to do so. So thank you for that. I am. As you were talking, I was thinking about Kimberly's comments about sort of communications firms and sort of the challenges that you have in identifying what you do in a way that's sort of understandable. And I kept thinking, I was sort of thinking about what she said, and I think that in terms of a marketing company, the list of services there is so varied. Everything from video production, content creation, marketing strategies, event planning, media buys, those are very different kinds of services, which potentially have very different set of customers within a corporation. And, I guess, it's all beautifully done and beautifully articulated. I mean, we've talked about some of the nitpicking things about, the NACE codes and telling us what those are and things like that. And I think those would apply. But so I guess my larger feedback is around helping us understand a little bit more specifically what is your sort of key or most valuable service. So, if I saw this, I wouldn't necessarily know where to go with it. Do I go to our corporate, advertising folks? Do I go to our media production folks, the folks that make videos? Would I go to, those sort of major advertising campaigns which involve particularly the creative part? We and I think others tend to go to sort of these giant advertising, New York-based advertising firms. It's very difficult to knock them off their block. I mean, I will tell you that. And so that means we need to find a niche. for which a company like yours would be able to compete. And so helping us understand which of these services sort of fits that description is, and forgive me, I know I'm sort of rambling a bit. I just think that the range of services is quite broad, and in that way makes it difficult for us to help you. Is sort of, I guess that's how I'd summarize my feedback.
Thank you so much for that.
And along those lines, and there's a question in the chat, but through your research, you could figure out or find, well, how do you do the research to find out who needs what? And then once you find that out, then could you change your capability statement to fit those 2 to 3 needs?
Yeah, and David, what I would add is, use us. So, I could tell you that we have sort of two kind of advertising. We have retail, in our case, my company, we, obviously we have Chevron branded gas stations. So part of our advertising is trying to drive traffic to those gas stations. It's intended to try to sell more gas and lubricant fuels. And we have corporate advertising, which works more on the corporate brand. And so, even if you knew that, going into this, that you might, and what suppliers do each of those parts of our business use. And so, having a conversation, so to help us kind of understand the landscape for all of these companies, I think would be really useful and help you be a bit more targeted in how you sort of pitch your services.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. Kimberly, anything to add to help David out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that everything I would have said was mostly hit on. The one thing I would say is, when you're doing a pitch in this type of environment, it's somewhat hard because, if you were doing a pitch directly to me, I would say, well, what are you trying to sell to Bank of America? Where can you add value specifically to Bank of America? And I think it's a little bit hard to get that specific in this type of session. But I think that would help hone in on kind of some of that, that getting more specific that was mentioned, because I do think that, typically, as I've already mentioned in this space, it's hard to really hone in on, where that core competency is that you'd be able to differentiate and provide services to Bank of America. Because usually for a large company like us, the generalist approach just doesn't work as well as it would for maybe a more mid-sized company.
Thanks. And Logan?
Yeah, so David, great job. Good pitch. I know it can be nerve-wracking, so you hung in there and you did that, even despite the fact that you couldn't see folks' faces at the moment in time. I know that feeling. So I would say that capabilities, to the other folks' points, I would really advocate for you to have 2 pitches and 2 capability statements at a minimum, right? In this environment, I would have pitched to the corporate folks that were on the phone just to have it more dialed in. So from that perspective, go for a niche, right? Is your niche LGBT? Are there any other certification? I'm not sure what your ethnicity is, or if you could get another certification. I see it says certifications, plural, so hopefully maybe you're planning on getting another one. If you're not, I would get rid of that word and just leave the NGLCC logo on there as the one that you've got right now. And really lead with what differentiates you. Like, what space do you play in? What's your biggest strength? And then, as Trung mentioned, hit us with some numbers, right? Like, so I was jotting things down. So you are running the gamut, which would work for small businesses, and you can go tier 2, and that's why it would be 2 different pitches. So how much have you saved? You're saying that you provide cost savings. What's the biggest dollar amount? How many clicks or engagement? How much have you increased those? Did you have a revenue increase that somebody experienced because they did a redesign on their website? You relaunched a website. What did that get them? I hear that as a small business owner, and I'm like, oh, that sounds like a headache. But if you made it painless and seamless, and it took only a week or whatever, really highlight that, because the thing that you do, yes, that is important, but the pain you save or the increase that you get somebody is going to be key. So, and again, having those two sets of numbers and pitches really towards the big companies versus smaller companies, you can be more of a, we can be a one-stop shop for smaller folks. And then the big companies, you're going to have to be very, very specific about where you're going to really excel. And by excel, I mean, you can say with confidence in to folks, I can do this, we can nail this, and that you're going to really do great because I want you to do great. The other thing with that, when talking about like big companies and what have you, security. Like what kind of security protocols do you adhere to? This is for all small business owners at this point. We are about to be able to announce something very soon with a very large company, tech company, and security is one of the key things that we had to go through. So that is becoming, especially when working with larger companies, what level of security do you have? What are those protocols? That may not mean a lot to small business owners at this moment in time, but it will start to become a bigger and bigger play there. So those are kind of some of my high level thoughts. And oh, in your pitch, who are you? What's your background? Where'd you come from? How long you've been around? How long has your company been around? And also I would put the year that you started this company on there. And then that way you don't have to update it. You know, if you say 1 year in business, 2 years in business, whatever, we all have to start somewhere. But if you have more experience than the amount of time your company has existed, I would list your specific experience as well. So that way it gives more gravitas to your expertise in that.
Awesome.
Logan, outstanding advice there from Outbranding. David, thank you so much. We appreciate you representing North Texas LGBT Chamber. And I tell people when I ask them to do this, you are going to get so much out of this and so much back. So appreciate the panelists giving all that great advice. And oh, Tammy, I'm going to throw this at you with only 9 minutes to go. So tell us kind of where you want us to go from here.
You bet. And let me just say, I mean, I think this is reflective. This has been such a robust panel today with our experts and sharing such great advice that we have literally just run out of time to go into these breakout sessions. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to just do a quick wrap up. And then if anybody has any questions that you want to share with our panelists while we still have them on, they are here to answer those. And so that's exactly what we're going to do. But I do want to, again, thank our panelists for sharing their expertise, their insight. Logan, has such great experience as a certified LGBTBE. And the one thing I want to say with our panelists, particularly, for our corporate partners that I engage with, these are individuals that are advocating for us in the supplier diversity world. And they are working for companies that are committed to the LGBTQ community and the LGBTQ business community. So we cannot be more grateful for their participation today. When we asked, they said, absolutely, we're here to support you. So I hope everybody's gained some great insight from this. But before we let our panelists go and then wrap it up, I want to just see if you have any questions. You can bring yourself off mute if you have any questions for the panelists, and we'll just entertain a couple of questions here. And feel free to bring yourself off mute, or you can put it in the chat.
Tina knows that I can't handle silence.
All right, Lynn.
Lynn Yeldell from the Austin chapter. I love that this is my first one. I'm a newbie, and my agency is very similar to David's. And so it's kind of that, circuitous question. We do a lot of that similar stuff for smaller size groups. So other than just looking at every organization out there that is looking for a diverse supplier, how do we narrow the field to find out where we might have a good fit? I know that's our job to do, but the universe is so vast. Is there a starting point for finding smaller organizations and companies that are looking for diverse suppliers, specifically marketing agencies, because I'm self-serving?
Any one of our panelists want to jump in and answer that?
So Lynn, also good to see you.
Hey, Logan.
You're in Austin, yeah. So you're wanting to go to the business owners, correct? Am I understanding that?
Correct.
Okay, so if you go to the NGLCC portal you will see in there that you can actually do a search and see all the other certified LGBTBEs.
Okay, perfect. And
I
I
think
just got that from Tina, so
I was
that
gonna say, and are you asking the other way? Like,
I
how
was
do you,
asking the other way, actually. So what,
yeah,
yeah,
like instead of calling all the Fortune 500s and filling out statements for all of them, right? Which one, how do you narrow it down?
I would doubt that I would be a fit for Pepsi and our team. And we have a smaller kind of contract base. I got certified because Tina told me to. So let's just be very clear about that. And if you get one contract, that's totally fine. I just think we need more representation. But I was just curious as to know how people most dig in and make this profitable and lucrative for them.
Dave, Kimberly, insight?
Well, yes, and Lynn, thanks for the question. I mean, first of all, I don't count yourself out in terms of the larger companies. I think the goal that what we is finding the right opportunity, and so participating is a big thing. Getting engaged, the NGLCC, and its network of regional affiliates that are represented here, as well as the national level. You will rather quickly sort of begin to understand the landscape, and talk to folks. I mean, I personally would be more than happy, and I want to speak for anyone else, to schedule a meeting, follow this, and we can talk about those things in more detail. I mean, that's sort of the value of these kinds of opportunities, is to connect you, learn who some of the players are, and begin to have those conversations. I think it's unlikely that you're going to compete with whatever the name of Garrity. I can't remember the name of the big firm.
Just call them Mad Men. Just that one.
Yeah.
But that does not mean that there is not an opportunity to you, perhaps more locally. Chevron is we have big operations in Houston. We have significant operations in Texas. Is there an opportunity for a company like yours to step in and support our operations? And I think the answer to that is maybe. Maybe, but finding the right opportunity is key, and the only way to do that is by getting a little bit more familiar, and so that me, I know you, I can connect you have a conversation with folks who will work more directly with our communications group and our advertising, whether it be corporate or retail, and seeing, you just never know. I mean, we may be doing a video for our corporate advertising of Logan's company, and we want to include him in our corporate advertising. And we don't want to send a film crew from California or New York. So you know what? There's a company based in Austin, I think, who could help us with that. And once you get that first opportunity, then things begin to change. So that, I don't know, I'm sort of rambling advice, but that's kind of my suggestion.
Thank you.
To piggyback off that, David, also too, quite often y'all, and I think you've also done this for me as well, is you make tier 2, right? You can become tier 2 to someone else, Lynn. So David might know a tier 1 to them that they need to increase their tier 2 spend. And so that's lower hanging fruit for you. So, there's quite a few companies that are really also increasing that. So one off the top of my head for sure is Toyota, and they've got a huge plant, in San Antonio, Dallas.
If I may, I'll try to be real quick, just a quick little anecdote. So we actually did do a corporate advertising piece. We did TV, 30-second spots when we were launching a new advertising campaign. It was called the Human Energy Campaign. And then we did want to feature diverse suppliers. So one of the 30-second spots, and I was talking to our folks, and they were talking with me, and the subject was essentially supplier diversity, but it had never dawned on them to utilize diverse suppliers in the creation of those spots. And I said, you know what, you'll be surprised. There are agencies all over the country, some right here in Texas, who could do exactly what you need. And you don't have to fly people in from from the West Coast or from New York.
All right. Well, with that great advice, I want to say again, Renee, thank you for bringing your perspective from government and leading the way in Bexar County. To Dave and Kimberly and Trung, thank you for your expertise from this corporate lens. And then Logan, of course, all your brilliance and leading the way as an LGBTBE supplier, not only in the state of Texas, but truly being a great role model for many certified businesses across the country. And to all of you for joining us, we are so grateful that you've been able to participate in the roundtable. It has been a robust morning of learning and growing in insightful information. With that, our next roundtable is going to be on July 20th. So mark your calendars for that. You'll be hearing more information about that. And then Pride Across Texas on May 27th. The Austin LGBT Chamber is leading that particular event for us. So keep an eye out for more details, get registered. It's going to be a great opportunity to connect across the state. And with that, we wish you a wonderful afternoon and go generate business. Let us know if you have any questions. We're here to support you as your local LGBT chambers. Thank you.
Great job, everybody.